Oh, it's a nice girly case you got there.
No, it's not girly, it's white. Okay? It's white because when it goes into a dark bag or a backpack...
Oh, you put it in your handbag too.
Hi, I'm Milton Player. This is Millionaire Agent Secrets, and it's Q&A time. So this is the team: Matthew, James, Jared, and AK, the killer. 47. They're going to throw me some curveballs, and I'm going to see if I can knock them out of the park. So, throw them at me, James.
So, just talking about pest and building, I've heard you say to your vendors about if you don't hear from me during that cooling off period, that's a good thing. I'd like you to explain that a little bit more.
All right. The reason I do that is for a few things. One, I seem a little bit superstitious about it. I find personally that no news is good news during this period. So as I've been a seller myself, it feels like if you ever really want to extend your life, just enter into a cool-off period as a seller. And mine got extended for 3 weeks. It felt like 5 years. It was incredible. So I didn't age. It was sensational.
You didn't age during that. I would have.
Yeah. So what tends to happen is the sellers start to panic a little bit. It can get messy. You want to keep it clean. I don't want to hear from the buyer. I want the pest and building people to ring my PA or receptionist and book it in. Certainly I'll work with that and make sure the pest and building's okay, and the buyer might want to attend. But no news is good news. And what I have often found happens is, say 10 working days is a long time, they need to relax and not stress. So by cutting off communication a little bit, it's stopping the owner stressing so much. And I used to find that it was the last day, they'd ring me, "Hi Milton, is everything okay?" Yeah, it seems fine. Half an hour later the buyer rings and says there's a problem. And it was almost like a curse. And it used to happen so much that I decided I'm going to start saying to sellers, what you don't want to do is the less you hear from me in this 2 weeks, the better. And you'll probably want to ring me on the last day or the day before and ask me if everything's going okay. Don't do it. Because for some reason it almost activates, even though it's out there and it's obviously not true because it's just one of those things and superstitions aren't necessarily true. It just seemed to happen to me enough for me to just stop it. It took the stress away from me as well. So if I was my whole thing, if I'm working in the best interest of the seller, they need me not stressed and in control. Of course they're going to be stressed a little bit, but they need the agent that's working for them in control. They need them to be on their game all the time. If the seller is constantly talking to me and maybe this is... Sometimes what they do too is they force me to do things that I know shouldn't be done. You haven't heard from them, can you check with them if it's okay? Just check this. I need to ask them this. You're better off not having much to do with it in that period. The less communication I've found with the seller and the buyer, and I'll even say that to the buyer as well, the better in that period. Just let it take its natural process and stop interfering. And I find a lot of agents get nervous themselves. The owner's nerves hits the agent, the owner's stress hits the agent, they start interfering with the buyer, and you can start causing issues that aren't even there. Yeah. It's just like when I do a VIP, as I say, the less I say sometimes the better, because then I'm not coming across as a real estate agent.
And you're not creating drama.
Yeah, and they can see already. And by me not necessarily going, "Oh, what do you think of this? Isn't this great?" It's more them thinking, he obviously he's not desperate. So he's obviously confident. I come across confident in my viewings. Similar thing with this. Needs to stay confident. We have to think that there's not going to be an issue. By the owner stressing out and me stressing out and both of us interfering, we could create an issue that's not even there. Just relax.
Milton, you touched on in advising the seller that the buyer may wish to attend a pest and building inspection. Is it something you influence your buyers to do and actually promote them to do? Because I sometimes find sellers get a little bit nervous about that process, about the buyer attending the home during that period of time. And obviously, I'd like to know how you handle that.
I tell, it's again, just like we were talking set up to sell earlier. You set up the sale on this still. So I'd say to this seller that I will try and encourage the buyer to come, because when you get a written report of 40 pages 3 days later, it scares the crap out of you, especially if you haven't bought 100 properties, which is 99% of people, and it may be 5 years, 10 years since you bought the last property. So when you get a whole list and you're going through it, it just gets worse and worse and worse. If you're there with the pestle builder and there's a few little issues, normally verbally they're a lot more easygoing. And they'll say, look, there's this, but in reality it's not that bad. If I'm there as well, hardly saying much at all, but observing, knowing the times to cut in, and they're pointing something out to the buyer, and they're making it sound, the buyer's getting a bit spooked, I might be able to interject and say, if it was your property, would you worry about it being a 50-year-old house? Nah. Oh, okay. And the buyer relaxes. So it's just like everything. It's a matter of picking your timing, being perceptive, knowing how to influence, and you can really control a pest and building if the buyer's there. And everything that's revealed, I get to hear as well, because they're going to verbalise it. So I'll know pretty quickly. If there's something I need to mitigate or fix, I can fix it there and then.
Okay, I have a question. When you do a market appraisal and you miss out on the property and it gets listed with another agent, that's at a higher price, okay?
Yeah.
How much should you monitor that property? I mean, obviously you want to take something away from that experience and use it for later, but how much should you monitor that property without sort of affecting your psyche?
Yep, definitely.
Having an AVO.
The way I look at it is, to me, the most important thing to me is how I'm emotionally handling things. Whether I will dwell on that, whether it will affect me moving positively to the next thing. The two things I do is, one, I always tell you all to have a marking list. So after every listing, you mark yourself on the different points, so you already know how you performed and why you didn't get it. The other side of things is asking the seller what it was that convinced them to go with the other person and what they think you did wrong. And then saying, in addition to that, what other reason was there, so you get the truth. Would I follow it? No. Personally, I wouldn't. I might put it in my diary. I'd probably say to them, how long have you signed with them? If they say 3 months, I might just put it in my diary for 1 week before the 3 months is up to alert myself. But I wouldn't think of it until then. And that way I'm wiping it out of me. Yeah, but mentally I'm going to be happy now because I know I've put it in my diary. So it's not like I can procrastinate about it or ruminate about it, thinking, oh, if I'm doing the right thing, I need to be on top of that house. I completely ignore it. I'm definitely not an advocate of the agents that keep following the owner up the whole time, because if you're really going to do well in real estate, it should be about you caring, not about you worrying about your own pocket, and that's desperation in my view, and I don't think it's a smart thing to do for your own self and the way you operate. You should be concentrating on the things you can control, and that is doing the right thing by people, working hard, doing every single step in the system you should do, and not being affected negatively by things, because it's not the next seller's fault that you lost that listing, so you shouldn't be dwelling on that. You should be, every listing you've got, they're the ones you can control, and you should be putting all your energy into that, making sure they sell.
You'll get these amazing highs when you're in the midst of selling something and that you've got a bid on it or something, and you've got all this extra work that you have to do, and then that falls apart, and then you sort of hit the ground and you sort of almost, there's this little bit of depression that goes with it, and you know that it's just because adrenaline's been up here and that's just dropped. Yeah. And you put so much work in and you haven't stopped.
It's that thing that we were talking about earlier on today about being in control.
Yeah.
And if real estate is a roller coaster, sales is a roller coaster, and it can be very bipolar in how you're feeling.
That's exactly what it feels
like. You need to control that. Actually, have you given back the quiz?
No, I haven't given
I need the quiz back. Yeah. So what you need to do is you need to make sure I'm always thinking about controlling my emotions. How am I taking this? How am I coming across to people? But how also am I internalising it? So I learnt not to necessarily celebrate too much optimistically the sale.
Yes.
because it's never a sale, is it, until
Too right, till
it's
the fat
done.
lady sings.
Yeah. So it's never sold until it actually goes through until that
Yeah.
unconditional period. So I wouldn't get too excited about it, and I try to stay relatively neutral. So you're in this pattern, the waves are bouncing like that. You need to know where your mean is, because you know how I was talking about regressing to the mean at one
Yeah.
stage? So we all have a certain level that we're naturally at. Whether it's there, or there, you need to know where your level is, because when you're stressed, say your level is here, and you're trying to be up here, upbeat all the time, something bad happens, you just go boom, straight down the bottom of that level. You're probably far better off just sticking within
middle,
that and just
yeah.
trying to slowly build it, but cutting out too much of those highs and lows. So don't celebrate a sale too much, don't get too excited. So communication, like we say a lot, is the key. If you can communicate with people often and in a very, I suppose, mature way, where you're not letting your emotions dictate anything, and you are controlling it, then a lot of good things will come of that. And in your communication, you'll get the trust off people.
Yeah.
And if you don't fire back, which is why we have that aim
Yeah.
thing for conflict, then you'll find that you can control it. You just have to understand that it's an extremely stressful situation for the sellers and the buyers. This is massively stressful for them.
Absolutely.
They're coming at you at the height of their emotion.
Well,
So
that-
you
yeah.
have. So in a way, you're a bit of a psychiatrist
Or
in a
a
way, where you're having to
yeah.
calm them down, but also understand there is a reason why they're shooting at you. You're the middle person.
Yeah.
And so you're going to cop a few hits. You have to be in a suit of armour.
You do.
And be able to block it and realise that they're coming from a pain position, a position of pain, or a position of emotion, or a position
It is,
of
it's
stress.
so emotional.
So you need to be the calming influence, not the conduit.
No.
And if they're stressing you, you're going the wrong path. You need to be the person that's actually calming them down.
Yeah.
And then leading and guiding, because you can't guide or lead people if you're getting affected by them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talk about psychology to influence sellers or buyers and to lead them down the right path. Do you find that sometimes it's a good idea to play some psychology on your own, on yourself, to make sure that you are keeping that certain calmness, or to understand that you can let go of things quite quickly?
Yeah.
Is that important to you?
Massively. Yeah, even from every step of the way I used to look at it is that I always pretended I was up there watching down on me. So I was the observer of what I was doing. And it's the old thing of you are not your actions necessarily, because our emotions can control some of our actions. So you're not your behaviour is probably a better way to say it. So you're not your behaviour. And in those situations where I observed that, I wasn't behaving probably the best way I could have then, I'd start trying to work out what I could do and put in place to improve that for next time. So in the early days in sales, for example, you could get quite stressed quite easily, because it's almost like you're taking it all personally. It's like, it's not me doing it. So it feels like they're having an attack on you, where all they're doing is letting out their pain. And so you could find yourself getting a little too aggressive with them, or just taking the wrong path. So I used to watch that and take notes. And one thing I've always said is, and I don't know if anyone's done this, but having a journal where you have two sides of a book, don't you? So here's a book. There's an advantage with this, because there's that and there's that. So what I can do here is write down every positive and good thing that happens every day. And then that, I write down the bad stuff that happens. And then, say it's a year down the track, and I make a mistake and get abused for it. And so then all of a sudden you're feeling roller coaster, you're feeling, crushed. Am I any good at this? Is this an inherent problem? What's going on? Am I no good at sales? I'll have a look at the journal. That's where I meant to look at the journal if that happens. Okay. Do I want to open it? I'll write down the issue. Page 2 now. I stuffed up here. Okay, now what else am I meant to do? Oh, that's right. Okay, so that's 1.5 pages. I've been in sales a year. Okay, am I really that bad? 1, 2, 3, 4. Shit. I'm actually a lot better than I am bad. Oh, and let's see some of the stuff. Milton, he's really the most reliable person we've ever met. We'd never use anyone else. geez, he's so good looking. And then so I'd be reading a lot of these and going, okay, I'm not that bad. I just made a mistake. What's this say here at the top on the side? Because I've got all the little comments. These are mistakes. You are not your behaviour. You're allowed to stuff up sometimes. You do more good than bad. If you let it influence you, then you're in strife. Socrates used to say that because they got to a stage in his life where they just wanted him dead. And so they were stoning him. They were saying he's broken all these tax laws, all these different things, telling people he needs to be publicly, taken care of, etc., etc. People were just abusing him. And his followers were saying to him, how come this isn't upsetting you? They could kill you soon, this week. And first they're going to viciously beat you and stone you. So you're going to suffer. And he said, look, they can stone me, they can call me names, they can try and send me to jail, they can even kill me. But there's one thing they can't do, and they can never do, and that's affect what's inside of here. And I'm never going to let them do that, even if it means that I draw my last breath. They're still not going to get in how I think here. And I remember reading that at an early age and always thinking to myself, that's how you need to be. You can't let outside influences affect how you are inside and take you down the wrong course. Because too many of us in this world are led down the wrong path. We're told things when we're young and it affects us. We're told, and it's all lies. Like you're lazy. It could be your parents. God, you're so lazy. So for the rest of your life, you actually, without realising, have instilled in yourself, well, you're lazy. So now you've got an excuse for something, which is, remember, it's an excuse.
Yeah.
But you now think you're lazy. You're an idiot, or you're not that bright. So you think for the rest of your life, and you hear some people say, look, I'm not that bright.
Or a slow learner. You're a
slow learner. Yeah. It's not true. You just might learn in a different way than you were taught, that's all.
Yeah.
Or just not the way they like. Someone might have said something in anger themselves, and it's affected you because it was so harsh. I remember hearing stories from girls in the car with their dad, happy, jovial, laughing. One girl saying something, and she's asking, she says, shut up, just shut up, Brandy. Always talking, you just never shut up. You just need to learn to shut the hell up. And he said in such a harsh way, got to her in here, and for years later, she didn't talk anymore, hardly at all. It was like, oh no, I talk too much. So she became really quiet. As she became a young adult, people used to say, how come you're such a quiet girl? And she's thinking, no, I'm not. She didn't even realise it was happening. And it's only after going through certain courses that she did that she actually realised that it had happened to her. It's amazing what negativity affects us.
She's completely internalised it.
Yeah. So what I'd do in sales is I'd be watching myself constantly. I'd be checking how I'm handling things. For example, prospecting. I'd knock on doors, and of course you're going to get nasty people. You're trespassing. If I want someone, I'll call Nathan Slam. How dare you come here? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'd think to myself, okay, how can I take this in a good way? It's a bit. You can't really imagine how you could because you just got abused. But how can I see this as a good thing?
Don't go back to that door.
Yeah. Well, so I'd write a nasty thing in my book to make me feel happy. And I'd think to myself, this is great. Why is this great? It's great because... And so I'd constantly be thinking to myself, try using this comment. Instead of thinking negative, this is great because...
Yeah, because you get...
And then it's because all the other agents that knock on that door are going to be put off prospecting. So it means I'm probably going to be the only person that will continue to prospect.
Yeah.
Because they're scaring all my competitors away. I love them. So I love that person now. And I turn it around that way. So I'd constantly be thinking, how do I turn the negativity around to a good thing? It's a lesson at the worst. And I can use it for that. Yeah. Okay. All right, that's Q&A done. We'll go and do the next thing now. And goodbye. It's midnight. If you watch Anchor or listen to Anchor, then you'll know what I mean by saying it's midnight.